Good morning, y'all. What's up? What's up? First off, can y'all hear me? I got a new mic situation right here, so I got to make sure everybody can hear me okay first. If you can hear me, can you give me a one in the chat? I got a new mic situation. I want to make sure I can be heard okay. If not, I got to take it out. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, y'all can hear me. Good. Perfect. I got a new mic, so hopefully it's coming through crispy and clear for y'all. Just want to hop on real quick and chop it up with y'all before I get my day started and everything. Signing some books. So if you do not have my books, make sure you grab them. Black History Safe, My Life is my first book, and I'm signing some of my children's books right here. This is a low-key release right here. I haven't even truly released it publicly, or I haven't announced it publicly yet. But this is my second edition of my children's book, and you see Brother Malcolm on here talking to his younger self right there. It's an affirmation book full of amazing drawings and stuff like that. But check it out, y'all. So as I'm signing these books, I wanted to talk to y'all because it's a lot going on, right? It's a lot going on right now. And the thing that I'm seeing, if you looked at my most recent post, I made a post about the 1968 Columbia University protest, and was deep about the 1968 Columbia University protest, y'all, is the fact that they started protesting on April 23rd, 1968. And if you look right now, what's happening across the country, specifically, of course, at Columbia University, those students are also engaged in protests that are ongoing. Right? Like, matter of fact, as of yesterday, April 23rd, it was announced that they made the rest of the semester remote, which is probably only a couple weeks, relatively speaking, because most colleges are done, early to mid-May. But that's still a big deal. And as I'm processing that, and I'm thinking about the correlation between that and 1968 and how those students were protesting the Vietnam War, and how those students were also, here's what's important to understand. Those students were protesting something international, right? The Vietnam War. And they were also protesting something local, because if there's an injustice internationally, we don't have to look too far to see what's going on locally in terms of injustices. I mean, most of us can look outside of our windows, or as soon as we open up our phone, we see what's going on in terms of the systemic inequity that we're dealing with in this country. But back then in 1968, understand, April 23rd was also like 2 or 3 weeks after Dr. King was assassinated. It's in the midst of the so-called civil rights movement. So like the energy in the air is ripe for protest and agitation. So they were protesting the Vietnam War, but at the same time, they were also protesting against a gym that Columbia University was going to open up that was technically going to be segregated for Harlem residents who were mostly black. And in fact, at the time, they called it Jim Crow. So there's so many parallels between that, and it reminds me of that quote that I included in the video. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? We talking 56 years later, similar situation, different characters, same human patterns. So for me, it's really imperative that we see that connection, and also we see how the people who run the university have not changed. There were people in the comments talking about how they were engaged in protests at the Columbia University, within the past 10 to 15 years over them attempting to expand for eminent domain. A lot of these colleges, especially the Ivy League institutions, can find themselves operating as intellectual imperialists, like they set up shop in these neighborhoods that are predominantly black or Hispanic or low income. And then they want to expand. So to expand, they misplace us, right? And it's the same thing that happened here, of course, with the displacement of indigenous people. It's just really interesting, right? But at the same time this is happening, what do we wake up to? TikTok is going to be banned, in my opinion. I think it's going to happen. The House passed a bill. They're providing aid for, I believe it's Israel and Ukraine, and tucked underneath that bill is a TikTok ban. Now, technically, it's not a ban if TikTok is willing to sell it to an American entrepreneur or business or something like that. I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. So if they don't sell it, then I think within a year, TikTok will be banned in America. Now, I have my gripes with TikTok. I feel you. I see you in the chat. You hope TikTok is banned. I feel you. TikTok has some dangerous elements to it for me, especially as a parent. But also too, a lot of my platform is because of TikTok. TikTok is a gift and a curse. And anything that anything that's that bad to the left can also be that bad to the right, and vice versa. It's problematic, of course, if it's unmonitored, especially with our kids. But there's also a lot of impactful information on that. Like I don't think I would have the platform I have on Instagram if it wasn't for, TikTok, even though they also suppress a lot of information on the app, But let's look at all these elements together, y'all. We have college students, not just at Columbia University, but this is spreading across the country, right? I'm not too far from the University of Chicago. I'm in the Chicago area. Those students are planning a protest. I just saw that posted online, right? This is spreading. Why is this happening so much now? The time period, just like the 60s, is ripe. The 2010 set the tone for that. All the injustices that we knew about from a previous generation, from the 90s, from the early 2000s, were now being broadcasted on the internet. Then you have these different waves of the Black Lives Matter movement. You have Occupy Wall Street. You have the Me Too movement. And now we have a generation of kids in college who were pretty much born and raised within that. They weren't like us, some of us who are millennials, where we were born, raised, and then we came on here. These folks, when they came out the womb, a phone was handed to them. You feel what I'm saying? These folks had a phone handed to them. They had a social media page before they was born. And that's true for some folks, for real, for real. They in this, right? So social media, yeah, it's a gift and a curse. So what happens when you turn what should be a curse because it's going to allow these companies to profit? What happens when you turn it into a gift for all of us? These kids have seen everything that's going on, not just because of what we exposed them to from a previous generation of what we were fighting for and what we continue to fight for, but also because on TikTok, it's more accessible. Why is it more accessible? TikTok has an algorithm unlike any other app. And Instagram has started to use some of those same practices. The thing about TikTok that's dangerous for America is the fact that, for one, it's not owned by us, so they can't control all and filter all the information. But two, anybody at any time can have a video that goes viral on TikTok. Like my first video on TikTok in 2021, when I didn't have any followers, I got like 10,000 views. I had a page on Instagram, Facebook. I had never had a video go beyond like 6,000 or 7,000 views. But here I am jumping in the game, no followers, bam, video exploded. And it wasn't because I had a platform or a name. It's because the content was good and it was stuff that people wanted to see. So it progressively grew. You can join TikTok now, and if your content catches on, you blow up. So just because you have a big platform doesn't mean every video will connect. So if you are someone who experiences or witnesses an injustice wherever you are in America, and you decide to post that thing on TikTok, there's an opportunity for the world. There's potential for the world to see it. See, the previous generation, us, right? We got our news filtered through the mainstream media. And those of us who grew in more radical households may have had access to newspapers, black-owned newspapers, maybe independently owned newspapers, right? And we can get different types of information. Our parents had to be very proactive in getting us involved and in these circles of influence to learn these things. Many of the injustices we heard about or knew about growing up were told through the grapevine, right? We knew that Rodney King was happening. I was a young child at the time, but we had never seen proof of it until somebody recorded it, right? And some of us had seen proof of it, but it wasn't recorded. So when you told somebody, it didn't matter. right? I mean, in 2016, I'm proof of this. I dealt with a hate crime, and the only reason it went to trial is because it was recorded. That person would have never gotten arrested if it was just my word versus hers as a white woman. TikTok is dangerous to this country, y'all. Anything, gift and the curse, is dangerous because what happens when you put those kids in a position to change how they utilize what's supposed to be a curse. Yeah, it's addictive. Yeah, as a former classroom teacher, I hated social media and the phone because our kids, they ain't even fully developed. They can't put the phone down for real. They can't, y'all. They can't. They can't. But what happens when you give that child a book that flips their perspective, or while they're scrolling, they come across a video that flips their perspective and now they're in tune. These kids are more informed and have more information than any other generation. It's a good and bad thing. What happens when they learn how to process it? Because getting too much information can be overwhelming, but what happens when they learn how to process it, y'all? What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Okay. College students are dangerous. All right. This is why college students are dangerous. College was one of the best times of my life. College was so amazing to me for a few reasons. One, most importantly, I found my wife there. That's most important. Two, I found my passion. And three, I made lifelong connections with people, friends and business partners, right? It's dangerous because if you come there with the right mindset, there will probably never be another period in your life where you're around people who are the same age as you, who have a similar mindset and wavelength, who don't have the same constraints as adults who think the same way as you. What do I mean? Capitalism kills movements. Capitalism kills movements, y'all, because you care about everything that's going on, but you can't actively engage in it because you got to go to work, right? Some of y'all probably watching this at work or on the way to work, or maybe you worked overnight. And because we have to be able to generate income to survive, literally, we got to be able to eat. We can't fault anybody. We got to eat. We got to prioritize self first, self-preservation. So you care about the video. You care about what you see. You care about the genocide. You know what I'm saying? But if I have to make a choice immediately, I have to choose to go to work because I got kids, because I need to eat. But one of the things that we do is we assume as adults that there aren't any other people who think the same way we do, who have a similar experience. So it traps us into this individualist mindset. Unions form when people who are dealing with the same disenfranchisement at work begin to talk on the side and say, hey, do you think the same? What's your check look like, right? How was your conversation with the boss like, right? Then you begin to see these commonalities, and then that eventually leads to movements. See, but when you're in college, y'all, your main priority for most people, especially at the Ivy Leagues, is class. Your job is work. I mean, like, you take out loans for them. I took out loans, right? So I don't even have to worry about paying the loans back till later if I'm a college student, right? And if you got it good, like your parents maybe got a little something for you for some money, but everything else, your meal plan, you could be a broke college student, but you still gonna eat. All that stuff is taken care of based on your financial aid status, right? It's taken care of. So your priority is learning. There comes a time when you're in college, right? When you prioritize learning, that you inevitably meet up with somebody else who has the same priority, often in the same class or in the same group. And then what happens, the powder keg, is you all then go to TikTok or social media, or back in the day, watch the news, and you see the same injustices happening in real time that you just studied in class. That's dangerous, There's no coincidence that these students at Columbia University are at the forefront of this movement now. It's not to say they started it, but it's to say they got more time. They got more time. Because if you quit going to work and protest, the possibility in capitalism, which prioritizes capital and money and profit above all, is you might lose your job and livelihood. But at the university, the worst thing that's going to happen is you get kicked out the class. But if all of your students do it like they did now, then what happens? Power to the people. Now we got remote classes because we all stood up. My consciousness rose when I was in college because I had the opportunity from 9 to 3 o'clock sometimes to not work, but to take classes that filled me. And when I got through my prerequisites, what did I do? I began to take Black history courses, and it sparked something in me. And then what did I do? I began to join organizations where there were other Black folks who had the same mindset. Then I go to the cultural home. Then I go to these meetings. Then I find out they are protesting. Coincidentally, y'all, I was in college during like the first or second year Facebook existed. So it was that golden era where you had to have a .edu to actually be on the platform. So we're able to connect and organize with college students exclusively. We meeting up, we protesting. Right. My first or second year, we were protesting against a blackface party that a white fraternity and sorority had. We're marching. You can do that, right, in the real world, but it's probably going to be on a Saturday because we got to work. This time period, y'all, is so dangerous for those who assume they're in power. Because these college kids are getting round the clock updates and information, and it cannot be controlled. Yeah, this system can only exist through the perpetual disenfranchisement of us. And I don't just mean Black people. Because the trick is, white folks who are watching it, is for you to think that it's only on us, when there are more poor white people numerically suffering than anybody in this country. Drive through the Midwest, drive through some of these country towns, you'll see what I mean. But what happens when everybody wakes up collectively? Y'all, like, this generation is so cold because they used to lie to us blatantly back in the day, right? But it took so long for us to prove them wrong. And nobody would believe you. You'd be like, oh no, with Bush, there are no weapons of mass destruction. Or like, why is he in Iraq? Like all these questions. And it would take years for somebody to produce a documentary. Like Michael Moore would put out with Fahrenheit 9/11, and you got all these other things coming out. And you knew something wasn't right, but you had to wait. You couldn't necessarily prove it because the only time you had a platform is if somebody in the mainstream news decided to interview you potentially. Now it's, I see what's going on here and it's happening here. So let me grab my phone and show you proof of it. Mark my words, y'all. Mark my words for real. Like with this, what's going on right now with this government. And I'm just going based off the wisdom of history. If they ban TikTok, this generation of kids are going to be further radicalized. This generation of kids who are in college now, you have to remember, many of them, like, they went to school during the pandemic. These kids didn't even have a graduation. These kids realized that the issues they dealt with and faced were not because of them. It was because of us. And by us, I mean, like, we didn't do it, but you know what I mean, right? The pandemic wasn't these kids' fault. The fact that they are suffering from depression and stress at higher rates is not their fault. The fact that the world was shut down, it's not their fault. So they're looking at us like, what the hell are y'all doing? What have y'all been doing? And the way they were able to stay connected was with this. So now we, as the adults in the room who have these kids' best interests in mind, now we're going to say, we're going to take away the very thing that helped them maybe even find their circle, stay sane during the pandemic. And again, I'm not an advocate for young kids using social media and stuff, but I understand that when you on lockdown, y'all, like, for this is what these kids had. That was it. That was it. And this is how many of them became informed. They're learning more on TikTok than class. And now we as the adults who obviously don't care about these kids, and by adults, I mean the politicians, the people in power, the local school boards, the state rep, they don't care about these kids. And now you're going to take away the only thing they had that was theirs from their generation. Kids becoming multimillionaires at 15 and 16 because of this right here. You don't care about the kids. So if you take it away, you ain't going to have to be concerned about low voter turnout no more. You ain't going to have to be concerned about society being the way it is much longer because these kids ain't going to be going for it. And when they in college, I'm trying to tell you, it's the best of both worlds because you don't have to go to work every day. You don't have the obligations of paying bills all the time. You don't have to travel far to see your kid, your friends. And as adults, we understand how painful that can be, right? Because we probably see our friends once a year, our close friends, right? And maybe twice, maybe once a month, depending on where you live, right? But we don't have this utopia community of people being within walking distance or next door in the dorm. So for the politicians out there, maybe some of y'all even watching this, like, you think, I don't even know if you think you're doing the right thing. I don't even know no more. Because y'all are ridiculous, really. Doing anything to hold on to power and keep this empire up. And the empire is just not. It's just, the empire, it's a yacht headed towards an iceberg. And y'all are in the front steering that thing, like, excited to head towards the iceberg for some reason. You know? But I got to get out of here. I ain't even signed these books like I said I was, but I'm gonna mail them anyway. So Black History Saved My Life and the ABCs of Affirming Black Children. ErnestCram.com, and check that out. College students are dangerous, and it's a good thing for us. TikTok is dangerous if you use it correctly in a good way for us. Stay in tune with all this information, y'all. Stay in tune with what's going on. Connect with people who are like-minded, okay? At work, whatever. Even though capitalism attempts to stifle us from being able to organize because we have to work and we got to make money to survive, when you join with people, it could just be two other people. It doesn't have to be that way. You can organize and make the situation better, because what our kids are doing right now is the same thing that college students did in the 60s with the sit-in movements. You feel me? Like Dr. King, don't forget, he became a leader in the Montgomery bus boycott movement right out of college. He was 25, right out of grad school. So be inspired by what these kids are doing, but understand that, let that be inspiration and hope, because you at one time probably had that same youthful optimism. Don't be too much of a realist. Things ain't going to get better unless we decide to plant our face and our bodies right here and say, we got to do something different. Because the same thing that happened in 1968 at Columbia University is the same thing that's happening now. And if we don't do something different in 56 more years, y'all going to be watching this video again and saying, why didn't things change? I love y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'm going to be doing this a lot more. So make sure you share this, follow if you ain't following already. Stay in tune, log off and read a book, because we all need to read more books. And I'll holler at y'all soon. Peace.